My name is Alina Vance. I'm 36 years old, a pediatric surgeon, and a single mother to a 4-year-old son named Leo. 3 months ago, I was on a gurney in the trauma bay, my scrubs soaked with someone else's blood and my own, listening to the beep of my own racing heart on the monitor. My fingers were slippery, stained with iodine, as I tried to unlock my phone. I needed to find anyone, to pick my son up from daycare. The surgery I was heading into wasn't scheduled. It was an emergency, and I was the patient. What I got instead was a voicemail from my mother, her voice clipped and cold over the din of a restaurant in the background. Alina, for heaven's sake, you know we have the charity gala with your sister tonight. It's been on the calendar for a year. Your father is a co-chair. Surely you can manage this. You always do. I listened to it twice, the words not computing through the fog of pain and fear. So I did manage it. Right there, as they were prepping me for an emergency appendectomy that had ruptured, I called a service I'd never used before, a premium concierge childcare agency, authorized an exorbitant payment from my phone, and sent them the security codes to my apartment. It took 6 minutes. And in those 6 minutes, something in me, some last frayed thread of hope, finally snapped. From that hospital bed, high on fear and fentanyl, I made a decision. I canceled every automatic payment, every standing order that had been bleeding my bank account dry for 9 years. The condo fees, the luxury car lease, the country club membership, the family phone plan, all of it, gone. 3 weeks later, as I was still moving stiffly, trying to lift my laughing son without wincing, there was a knock at my door. But before I tell you who was standing there and what happened next, I need to take you back to the beginning. I was born into the Sterling family, which, in our corner of Connecticut, meant something. Not old money, but aggressively new money, polished to a high shine and constantly on display. My older sister, Cassandra, was the family's crowning achievement. She was 4 years older, radiant, with a laugh that could disarm a room and an ambition that our parents found utterly captivating. When she declared she wanted to be an art curator, my mother wept with joy and called it a noble pursuit of beauty. When I at 16 said I wanted to go to medical school, my father nodded thoughtfully and said, "Stable, a solid, respectable path." That was the word that followed me. Solid, reliable, stable, never brilliant, never dazzling, just stable. I convinced myself it didn't matter. I found a different kind of magnetism in the precise lines of a textbook, the intricate map of the human body, the silent, high-stakes drama of an operating room. I got into Johns Hopkins for undergrad, then Columbia for med school. The day I matched into one of the most competitive pediatric surgery residencies in the country, I called home, my voice shaking with pride. My mother answered on the first ring. "That's wonderful, darling. Can I call you back? Cass is having a meltdown. The gallery lost its funding for her next exhibition." Click. Compare that to Cassandra's 25th birthday party. My parents rented out a waterfront loft in Brooklyn, flew in a chef from Copenhagen, and commissioned a sculpture in her honor. My graduation dinner was at a chain steakhouse, interrupted twice by calls from Cass about a missing shipment of canvases. I constructed a narrative for myself, a sturdy little shelter I could live inside. The arts are volatile, Cass needs the support. Medicine is predictable, I can handle myself. It was a lie, but it was a comfortable one, and it almost worked. Until I realized their favoritism wasn't just emotional, it was a financial ecosystem, and I was its sole, unwilling benefactor. It began 9 years ago during my first year of residency. I was drowning in 80-hour weeks, surviving on coffee and adrenaline when my father called. His voice had a strained, unfamiliar note. "Alina, kitten, a bit of a cash flow problem. The quarterly assessment for the penthouse came in, and with Cass's latest project, well, could you bridge us for a month, just this one time?" Just this one time was $3,800. I sent it that night, exhausted but feeling a grim sense of duty. I was a doctor now. I could help. That one-time bridge became a permanent toll. The penthouse fees, then the lease payments on their BMW 7 Series when Dad downsized his company car, then the monthly retainers for Cass's various brand consultants and social media strategists. When I got pregnant with Leo and his father, a fellow resident decided parenthood wasn't part of his 5-year plan. I called home from a call room, 7 months along and vomiting from preeclampsia. "Mom, I'm scared. I need you." "Oh, sweetheart, we would be there in a heartbeat," she said, and I could hear the clink of glasses and jazz music behind her. But Cass is finalizing the details for the Venice Biennale. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You understand, don't you? You're so strong. They didn't come for the birth. They didn't come for the first harrowing, sleepless year when I was juggling a newborn, a fellowship, and a heart that felt permanently bruised. But the automated transfers kept going. $3,800 on the 1st of the month, $1,500 on the 15th for incidentals. I started a document, a cold, clinical log. I told myself it was for taxes. But really, I think I needed to see the evidence, to prove to myself I wasn't going crazy. The total, after 9 years, was a breath-stealing $486,000. I never asked for thanks, but I suppose, in some hidden chamber of my heart, I expected a shred of basic human consideration. What I got was the voicemail in the trauma bay. The pain had been building for days, a stubborn ache I'd attributed to stress, bad hospital coffee, and lifting a squirmy toddler. I was in the middle of a complex laparoscopic procedure on a 12-year-old when my world telescoped into a white-hot point below my right ribs. My vision spotted. I remember the circulating nurse's alarmed face, the feel of the instrument slipping from my sweat-slicked grip, and the lead surgeon's voice, sharp and clear. "Vance, out! Now!" The next hour was a blur of imaging, pressed lips from the attending ER physician, a woman named Anya Sharma who I'd known for years. "Alina, your appendix is a grenade that's already gone off. We're taking you up. Now," she gripped my shoulder. "Who has Leo?" Daycare closed in 45 minutes. My usual sitter was out of town. The panic was more acute than the pain spreading through my abdomen. I called my parents. It went straight to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. I texted, "Emergency surgery. Need you to get Leo from Bright Horizons. Now." The reply wasn't a text. It was the voicemail. Her voice. So polished, so utterly inconvenienced. "Alina, for heaven's sake, you know we have the charity gala with your sister tonight. It's been on the calendar for a year. Your father is a co-chair. Surely you can manage this. You always do." Anya was watching me, her dark eyes missing nothing. She'd seen me sew up gunshot wounds and deliver catastrophic diagnoses with a steady voice. She'd never seen me look like this. "Alina," she asked softly. I handed her my phone. "Play that, please." She listened, her expression hardening into something fierce and protective. She handed the phone back. "Give me Leo's details. I'll have my husband get him. He's on standby for our kids anyway." "No," I said, the word surprising me with its force. "No, I'm done." With trembling hands, I found the concierge service online, made the call, authorized the payment. The act felt surgical, decisive. As they wheeled me toward the OR, I looked at Anya. "Can you screenshot that call log, that voicemail?" "Already did," she said, holding up her own phone. The surgery was longer than expected. Peritonitis. A messy infection. I spent a week in the hospital, a week of IV antibiotics and draining abscesses, and the kind of profound fatigue that sinks into your bones. Not a single flower from my parents. No fruit basket, no frantic calls, just radio silence as if I'd simply vanished from the earth. The concierge service, however, sent detailed reports and photos. Leo, building elaborate block towers. Leo, eating dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets. Leo, sleeping peacefully in his own bed, hugged by a stuffed otter. Strangers had shown more care for my world than the people who shared my DNA. On the 5th day, the fog of infection and painkillers lifted enough for clarity. I asked for my laptop. My nurse, a gentle man named Ben, frowned. "Dr. Vance, you need to rest." "I need to do this," I said, my voice raspy but clear. Logging into my banking portal felt like entering a crime scene. Row after row of outgoing payments, a relentless 9-year hemorrhage. Sterling Property Management, BMW Financial, the Willow Creek Country Club. I canceled every single one. Then I opened my phone, and with a calm that felt otherworldly, I blocked my father's number, my mother, Cassandra's. It wasn't an act of anger. It was an act of preservation, like clamping a bleeding artery. Anya visited every day, bringing me terrible decaf coffee and gossip from the surgical floor. "How's the pain?" she asked one afternoon. I looked out the window at the gray January sky. "The physical pain is manageable. The other pain, it's gone. I feel light. For the first time in 9 years, I feel light. She just smiled, a small, understanding curve of her lips. I knew the reckoning was coming. The money would be missed. The excuses would morph into demands, then threats, then pleas. But I wasn't prepared for the form it took. 3 weeks later, I was home, moving with the careful posture of someone whose core had been recently sliced open. It was a Saturday. Leo was helping me make blueberry muffins, which meant most of the batter was on his pajamas and the floor. The kitchen was warm, sweet-smelling, full of his chatter. Then came the knock. Not the buzzer from downstairs, but a direct, firm rap on my apartment door. My blood went cold. My building had a secure lobby. Only someone another resident had let in, or who had a key fob, could get to my door. I had a terrible, sinking feeling I knew who it was. I wasn't ready. Would I ever be ready? I wiped my hands, told Leo to stay put, and peered through the peephole. My breath caught. Standing there was a woman in her late 70s, her posture erect, her silver hair swept into an elegant chignon. She wore a simple but exquisitely cut wool coat. My grandmother, Elinor Sterling, my father's mother. I hadn't seen her in 4 years. Family gatherings were always at my parents' penthouse. Grandma Elinor found them ostentatious and preferred her brownstone in Boston. I opened the door. "Elena," she said, and her voice, always so measured, held a tremor. She opened her arms, and I stepped into them, inhaling the familiar scent of lily of the valley and old books. She held me tightly, then pulled back, her sharp, intelligent eyes scanning my face, noting the lingering pallor, the way I subtly favored my right side. "I know," she said quietly. "Margaret told me everything." Aunt Margaret, my father's younger sister, the family skeptic, the one who always raised an eyebrow at my parents' extravagance. "Grandma, She held up a hand, the same gesture she'd used to silence boardrooms when she was the CEO of her own investment firm. "No explanations, you owe none, but I need you to come somewhere with me." From her purse, she extracted a thick ivory envelope. "My 80th birthday celebration, next weekend, at the Boston house. The entire family will be there." Her gaze locked with mine. "And it is long past time for certain accounts to be settled." Grandma Elinor sat at my small kitchen table, watching Leo with a softness I rarely saw in her. He, utterly charmed, was showing her his collection of polished rocks. "He has your focus," she remarked, accepting a piece of muffin from him with a regal nod. I set down 2 cups of tea. "How did you find out about the accident, the everything?" "Margaret called me the night you went into surgery. She'd heard from a friend of a friend at the hospital. When she told me the specifics of your parents' response," Grandma's lips thinned. "I have observed this dynamic for decades, Elena. The idolization of Cassandra, the instrumentalization of you. I chose, perhaps foolishly, to stay out of it, believing you would eventually set your own boundaries. I see now that the financial leverage made that nearly impossible." She took a precise sip of tea. "Do you have documentation of the transfers?" I nodded. 9 years, everything. "Good, I want you to compile it. A summary, not to weaponize but to illuminate. At my party in front of the entire family, the facts will be presented. The truth needs air and light." She reached across and placed her cool, thin hand over mine. "What they will try to do is paint you as unstable, ungrateful. They will attack your character. Are you prepared for that?" "I don't want to destroy the family," I whispered, my eyes on Leo. "You are." They did. "You are merely turning on the lights so we can all see the damage." The next week was a strange limbo. I compiled the data, the spreadsheets morphing into a damning biography of duty and disregard. $486,000. Aunt Margaret came over, her presence a storm cloud of righteous fury. She scanned the totals, her face flushing. "This is unconscionable, and they called you a burden while living in a penthouse you paid for." She shook her head. "Your grandmother is right. The narrative has been theirs for too long. Time to change the channel." I got a text from a cousin. "Heard things are tense. Cass is telling everyone you've been really off since your surgery, paranoid or something. Just FYI." So it had begun. The preemptive strike. Character assassination as a defense strategy. Grandma Elinor's Boston brownstone was a monument to understated wealth. Solid, quiet, filled with art and history, not flash. Cars lined the cobblestone street, Mercedes, Audis, a few Teslas. The whole Sterling clan was there. I parked my sensible SUV, my hands clammy on the wheel. Leo in his little bow tie was thrilled. "Big party, Mama." "Yes, sweetheart," I said, my voice thin. "A very big party." The interior was a murmur of polished conversation and clinking crystal. I saw them immediately. My mother, in a crimson gown that cost more than my monthly rent, holding court near the fireplace. My father, laughing too loudly at some uncle's joke. And Cassandra, a vision in emerald silk, floating from group to group, the sun around which everyone else orbited. They saw me. The laughter didn't stop, but it dimmed. My mother's smile tightened. My father's gaze swept over me and then away, as if I were a mildly unpleasant piece of art. Cassandra glided over. "Alina," she said, air-kissing near my cheek. "You came, and you brought Leo. How brave." Her eyes held a gleam of challenge. "We were all so worried. Mother said you had a little outpatient procedure." "A ruptured appendix with peritonitis," I stated flatly. "It was an emergency. I almost died." She waved a hand, the diamonds on her wrist catching the light. "Well, you look fine now. A bit tired, but fine. Resilience must be a doctor's trait." And then she was gone, absorbed back into the crowd. The ambush came 20 minutes later. I was getting Leo a glass of milk when I heard my mother's voice, pitched to Carrie. "So terribly worried. She's shut us out completely since the surgery. Won't return calls. We think the trauma, well, it can affect the mind. She's always been so sensitive, so prone to exaggerating." A cluster of aunts murmured sympathetically. My father added his bass note. "She made some wild accusations. We've tried to be patient, but it's been very hurtful." I felt the heat of dozens of eyes, the weight of their collective pity, their assumption of my instability. Aunt Margaret materialized beside me, her jaw set. "See, I told you. They're building their case." Then a clear, sharp sound cut through the murmur. A spoon tapped against a champagne flute. Grandma Alina stood at the base of the grand staircase. "If I might have your attention," she said, her voice not loud but penetrating. Every conversation died. "Before dinner, there is a matter of family business to address," she began. My father stepped forward, his face a mask of concern. "Mother, please, this isn't the time. We're here to celebrate you." "The time is precisely now, Robert," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. "For years, there has been a silent agreement in this family, a story we have all tacitly accepted. Tonight, we examine the ledger." She nodded to me. I felt frozen. Leo clung to my leg. Grandma Alina's gaze was steady, expectant. I walked to her side, my folder feeling like it weighed 100 pounds. I handed it to her. She opened it. For the past 9 years, since Alina began her residency, she has been the primary financial support for her parents' lifestyle. Not through occasional gifts, but through systematic, automated payments. She began to read, her voice a calm, relentless drone in the utterly silent room. Condominium fees for the Harborview penthouse, $3,800 monthly, totaling $410,400. Lease payments for a BMW 750i, $1,200 monthly, totaling $129,600. Country club membership dues, $650 monthly, totaling $70,200. She looked up. "Shall I continue? There are line items for credit card bills, for consulting fees paid to Cassandra's various ventures, for property taxes." The silence was now profound, shocked. My mother's face was as white as the marble mantelpiece behind her. "We never asked for this," my father blustered, his face mottled red. "She offered." "Did she?" Grandma Alina inquired mildly. "Or did you present a need and she, as a dutiful daughter, met it? For 9 years, without a single word of thanks according to her records. And what of the emergency 3 weeks ago?" She pulled out her phone. "When Alina, with a ruptured organ, facing emergency surgery, called you to retrieve her child, you were unavailable. She received this voicemail." She played it. My mother's voice, crisp and annoyed, filled the grand room. "Alina, for heaven's sake, you know we have the charity gala with your sister tonight. Surely you can manage this. You always do." A collective, sharp intake of breath. A distant cousin said, "Oh my God." "There is no context," Cassandra cried, her voice shrill. "That makes that sound as bad as you're implying." What context would you prefer? Aunt Margaret shot back, stepping forward. The context where your sister is septic on a gurney, what context excuses that? Grandma Alina raised her hand again. I am not a judge in a courtroom tonight. I am a matriarch presenting facts that have been hidden in plain sight. The financial exploitation, the emotional neglect, the grotesque failure of basic care during a medical crisis. She turned her gaze on my parents. You have lived a lie, funded by the child you taught to believe her worth was only in her utility. My father looked shattered. My mother was weeping, but they were tears of humiliation, not remorse. The family was staring at them, not with anger at first, but with a kind of dawning, awful comprehension. The perfect Sterling family was a carefully curated fraud. Grandma Alina looked at me. Alina, do you wish to speak? I hadn't planned to, but seeing them there, exposed, the intricate facade crumbled, words rose in my throat. I knelt down to Leo's level. Hey, buddy, can you go with Great-Aunt Margaret to see the big globe in the study for a minute? Margaret took his hand and led him away, throwing a last scorching look at my parents. I faced the room. I didn't come here for this. I came because my grandmother asked me to, and because I have been an accomplice in my own erasure for 36 years. I looked at my parents. I believed I was helping. I believed stable meant unworthy of celebration. I believed that by carrying your burdens, I would eventually earn a place in your eyes equal to Cassandra's. My voice broke, but I pushed on. That voicemail was just the final, clear sentence in a story you'd been writing my whole life. I was not a daughter. I was a line of credit with a heartbeat. My father tried to speak. We love you. Do you? I interrupted, and the question hung in the air, stark and terrible. Love doesn't bankrupt one child to adorn another. Love doesn't hang up when that child says she's scared and needs you. Love doesn't have a price tag, but it turns out your lifestyle did. $486,000 and my sense of self-worth. I took a shuddering breath. The payments stop. The relationship as it was stops. I am not a bank and I am not a backup plan. If someday you can approach me not as a resource but as a person, as your daughter, we can talk. But I will not hold my breath, and I will not teach my son that this is what love looks like. I turned and walked out of the room, through the stunned silence, to find my son. I heard the uproar begin behind me, shouted accusations, sobs, the chaotic din of a shattered illusion. The aftermath was a quiet, seismic shift. My parents left Boston that night. They sold the penthouse within 4 months. They couldn't afford the fees. My father, at 62, took a consulting job that required actual work. Cassandra's curated world also frayed. The scandal, whispered through her rarefied circles, cost her a major gallery partnership. I heard she's now working as a high-end personal shopper. My grandmother, however, became the center of my and Leo's universe. Her brownstone is our sanctuary. Aunt Margaret is my fiercest ally. Anya, my colleague, became a true friend. The family as a whole gently ostracized my parents. Invitations dried up. The spotlight they craved now felt like a harsh, exposing beam. 6 months after the party, Cassandra called. The polish was gone from her voice. She sounded hollow. I'm sorry, she said, and for the first time it sounded real. I liked being the star. I didn't want to see the cost. I don't expect anything from you. I see it now. Then build a life you can be proud of on your own, I said quietly. Start there. I haven't heard from my parents. Sometimes I wonder if they'll ever truly get it. But the wondering doesn't hurt anymore. It's a distant curiosity, like watching weather in another state. Now I live in a light-filled apartment near the hospital. The money that once flowed out now secures Leo's future. My life is filled with the real, messy, beautiful work of surgery and motherhood, of friendships built on mutual respect, not transactional need. The weight is gone. I am, for the first time, unburdened. If you're hearing this, and you're carrying a weight that was never yours to bear, know this. Setting it down isn't an act of betrayal. It's an act of rebirth. You cannot buy love. You can only give it freely and receive it in kind from those who truly see you. Your worth is not your utility. Your peace is not a price to be paid. It is your birthright. Take it. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched you, please show some love to this channel. Like, subscribe, and share your own stories of finding your voice in the comments below. Your experiences connect us all. For more narratives of courage and transformation, stay tuned to Real Calm Stories. Remember, your calm is your power. Protect